Welcome, 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 geeks and nerds, girls and boys, to a brand new episode of Geek to Me Radio. Tonight, we are talking games. We've got Hasbro's Senior Director of Inventor Relations, Tanya Thompson, on, talking about a Women of Inventors of Play seminar that they'll have on October 10th. After that, writer Stan Berkowitz joins us to talk about his new book, all about being a writer in Hollywood. All that and more, stand by.
We're talking TV, comics and movies, and video games. And if you don't know Star Trek from Star Wars, we'll try to explain. There are 12 doctors, 4 Hogwarts houses, 1 ring rolls and more. To be the greatest Pokemon master, you must catch them all. You must catch them all. Try to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all.
And if you're driving around the greater St. Louis area tonight listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS, hello to all of you out there. No video tonight. Joey V, my executive producer, is out on assignment, so I don't have him with me. He usually runs the video, so we're doing it old school, radio only. But for those of you who might be listening to us on the KTRS app or streaming us out there on ktrs.com/stream, hello to all of you. Thank you very much for listening. And of course, as always, if you're hearing my show after the fact in the podcast form, hopefully you're enjoying it that way. Make sure you join us live one of these Sundays, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, every Sunday for a brand new show. And of course, you can chat your questions to us on the KTRS chat stream at 84126. Just include your name, what part of the country you're texting from, and we'll ask those questions to my guests as we go throughout the night. Speaking of my guests, my first guest tonight is the Hasbro Senior Director of Inventor Relations, Tanya Thompson. She's joining us to talk about the Women Innovators. I said inventors earlier. The Women Innovators of Play. I can't read my own writing, but I'm sure Tanya will set me straight. How are you?
I'm very good, James. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, this is great. Hasbro, I mean, my gosh, been around forever. I can't count the number of Hasbro games I've played growing up. And of course, not to mention the toy department. The action figures kept me very busy as a kid and still to this day. But I'm fascinated. This is the second year of this particular event, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That's correct. Yep. Number 2. Glad to be doing it again.
Yeah, it must have gone well the first time if you're doing it again, I guess.
Yeah, it really did. And it's an important initiative for Hasbro. So I'm super proud and just very thankful that we're into year 2.
So talk a little bit about the genesis of this idea that kind of formed, hey, let's do the Women Innovators of Play program. What was kind of the thing that kind of sprouted this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I am the first woman ever to do this role at Hasbro. So I do inventor relations. So I'm traveling the world, meeting inventors. They pitch me ideas. I'm basically looking for Hasbro's next big board game. And I've been working at Hasbro since 2017. And I noticed in this role that there was a disparity between women and men pitching to Hasbro. And so I started doing things in my own small way in order to kind of improve that imbalance. And I was so thankful that our president of Hasbro, Kimberly Boyd, she kind of recognized that I was doing things in my own small way. And she said to me, Tanya, if I this is really important to me, women's initiatives are really important to me. If I could support you in some way, what would you do? And so like 2-3 years ago, I started putting things together and I pitched this idea to the executive. And Kim was a big cheerleader and supporter, and they decided, let's do it. So last year, there was a committee at Hasbro that helped me put together the first event. It was super successful. It's virtual. We had over 1,000 people attend the event. And it was really, really exciting. And mainly it's because Hasbro recognizes this imbalance and really wants to support it and make a difference. So I'm just super thankful that Hasbro is that kind of company.
And see, this is what I love, because you're giving me this information, Tanya, and to a lay person like me who just goes out to my local toy store or department store and might buy a game of Yahtzee or a game of Clue or Risk or whatever. I don't really ever think about this game's invented for, a male or female, or this was by a male or female. What is it, do you think, when you're doing this research, what caused this disparity that you noticed? Was there any kind of it just so happens that men are just more vocal about their ideas? What kind of caused this disparity to be in place?
I don't really know kind of where it was, where the genesis or what was the cause. I know in my life, whether it was when I studied to get my mathematics degree, when I was first kind of starting out in business, there's just always been more men typically than women. I don't know if it's I know personally raising 3 children, it often, you're really busy doing your life. And
Sure.
So sometimes men have a little bit more, ability to kind of do other things, but it's not for lack, I don't think, of I would say what I've seen in the games, because I'm a big gamer myself. So physical board games, I love them. I go to conventions. I've been going to them for 20 years, and I'm starting to see a shift. But certainly in the beginning, there was just even more men out publicly playing games. So I'd sit at a table. I might be the only woman. That has been a thing, and we're starting to see that change.
Well, I mean, that's great. And I'm wondering, you just talked about your degrees in mathematics and business. Just to get a little into your own origin story, did you see yourself working for a game corporation? Obviously, you're a gamer. That kind of, I think, would be a dream fit. But what was your initial idea of where your career would head?
Yeah, this is my dream job. Absolutely. Did I know it existed as a kid, even as a young adult when I first started in a career? Absolutely not. I actually started my working life as a teacher. I taught high school mathematics.
Oh, cool.
And then I met a CEO of a toy company or a toy and game company called Think Fun. His name was Bill Ritchie, and he came to speak at a conference I was doing for other teachers. And then eventually he hired me, and I'll never forget my first toy fair in New York. I'm there. Oh. I'm at the Think Fun meeting room. We're meeting some people from Hasbro. And Mike Hurdle, who did this role before me, kind of reached his hand across the table and said, "Hi, I do for Hasbro what you do for Think Fun." And I almost fell over because I didn't even realize it was a thing that people could do. So I was like, what, there's other people that do this awesome role? So, it was never something that I kind of dreamed when I was a kid. I've just always really loved board games. I love people. I love travel. So it kind of just happened.
And again, this is the event that we're talking about, Women Innovators of Play. If people are out there, this is kind of open to anybody? Are there any preliminaries that people had to submit ideas first to join? Talk a little bit about the event itself and how our listeners, if there's a female listening who's like, you know what, I've got some great ideas. How could someone like that get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So the event this year is on October 10th. So if you're listening, mark your calendar. It's Thursday, October 10th. Anybody can sign up. You can go to our website and register. You have to be 18 and over to register due to legal reasons. But if you go to spark.hasbro.com/Women Innovators, or even if you just Google Hasbro Women Innovators, it should get you there. So you want to go there and you want to register. And the day is full of it's 2.5 hours of speakers, incredible speakers, all kind of focused on an audience of women. Now, you don't have to be a woman to register. We welcome allies. We welcome everybody. But the content is definitely focused on women. And so you don't have to submit an idea or anything. Just if you're curious, just come register, sign up, and then you'll see the amazing content on the website that we have to offer. And we're doing it virtually. So it's not like you have to travel anywhere. It's free. You don't have to pay anything. And you can, as long as you can handle the time zone of wherever you are in the world,
right.
You can join.
Well, luckily, I don't think there's any such thing as jet lag when the internet's involved. That's good
right?
for as long as you're a night owl like me and you get up at 2 a.m. to do the conference. I think it's perfectly acceptable for anyone. And you've got a great list of speakers. You mentioned Kim Boyd, who's the president, one of the speakers as well. I love Emily Tang, whatever this title is. I want this job, Senior World Builder. That just sounds cool.
Yeah, there's really, really incredible speakers that we have. And Emily's a part of an incredible panel called Crafting a Great Story. So a lot of narrative writers from Magic the Gathering, Wizards of the Coast, from Hasbro, and they're all, and another company, a narrative lead at Exodus, and where it's more console. So it's basically crafting a great story from tabletop to console. We also have Dr. Becky Kennedy, who, if you have ever seen an amazing parental kind of advice on TikTok, it's probably her. She has an incredible following, and she's talking about the power of play from her, because she's a clinical psychologist, and she's an author and CEO of Good Inside. Mm-hmm. So she's done TED Talks, she's written books. So really excited to have her. Also, there's so much great content. Dr. Michelle Fowler, who's an astrophysicist from NASA, is speaking about overcoming self-doubt, which is really important. I know something that I've struggled with and many other women have as well. There's also a panel about the state of play, so market shifts and buyer behavior in today's industry. Huh. We have Jeff from Meta, who's speaking how to sell your idea on social. And then and Emily Warolo, she is from Play-Doh Imagination. She's a coach. So she's talking about imagination as a superpower. And then we also have our CEO, Chris Cox, is speaking, Roberta Thompson, who's our Chief Communications Officer, and Jeter Gutter, who is our Chief Financial Officer. They're speaking, kind of having a fireside chat. I mean, it's just such a full, incredible day of amazing people speaking to this audience.
And I tell you, Play-Doh, not even as a toy, as a stress relief, because I smell it and it takes me right back to my childhood. And I just like to grab a fresh glob of Play-Doh right out of the can and just squeeze it between my fingers. So not even as a toy, as a stress relief, between the smell and the textile of the texture feel of it. I think everyone needs to get a can of Play-Doh when they're in a bad mood. Keep it in the car when you're driving. It'll reduce road rage. That's just a little unsolicited therapy advice from me.
I appreciate that. It's true. Who needs a fidget toy if you've got a can of Play-Doh?
Exactly. I'm very curious, though, because I'm one of my degrees is in psychology, and I'm curious the differences that seem to make certain types of games resonate more with one sex over another. I'm just curious, when you're doing the research on this, do you find that there are certain games that apply equally to any gender, or there are certain ones that are more male-driven, more female-driven? Where does the kind of the psychological underpinning of that kind of come in when you're looking at these games?
So when we're designing games, we're really looking at connecting with our consumer. So we put our consumer in the center. And the consumer, really, what games do is they tap into two primal human needs. One is to be social, and one is the desire to belong. So when we're designing games, we're not really looking at one gender or another. We're just looking at games overall and how they connect people together. I know, raising 3 kids myself, there's nothing that we did more well than to raise our kids playing board games. So when the family's in chaos and out of control, we all would have game night, and it would just suddenly connect us all together and have us laughing and smiling when we were just fighting over chores before that. So there's just something really primal about games, and we need it now more than ever, especially post-pandemic and everything else.
Oh, certainly.
People are looking for a way to connect.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating too. Again, this might be a little off topic, but do you know different cultures have different games associated with them? Are there certain aspects that you found that certain games are just universal, and what do you think that main thing is that appeals to certain games throughout cultures, throughout gender? What certain games just have certain appeals? Is there any kind of universal constant that you found there?
Well, so I have noticed one, I will say Monopoly is the largest, like most recognized. We've done research and it's like 98% of people recognize Monopoly.
Wow.
So is that a great example? Because also you hear a lot of the table flipping and all of those kinds of things, honestly, that happen in Monopoly. But there's this thing around what happened in 2019. There's a game, not ours at Hasbro, but a game called Wingspan that was published by it's a woman inventor. Her name is Elizabeth Hargrave. And when it first came out, a lot of people were like, this game, it's not going to be it's about birds. And it was very scientifically based around birds. And it was like building nests and develop building a bird community in the game. And some people were like, they just dismissed it. But in actual fact, what it happened was it got both genders to the table, because up to that point, a lot of games were like battles and medieval fighting and like really like very frankly male gender kind of themes. And this theme was very neutral, and it changed the face of our industry. If you look at board games, I travel to all the events, and I'm just actually going on Tuesday to a big one in Germany called the Essen Games Fair. And you see all the things that are trending. And when that game came out, suddenly now they're like, oh, you mean birds sell games? Consumers want these kinds of themes. And then we saw nature and they weren't just the medieval themes anymore. So that really resonated with consumers.
Is there, and you might not know the answer to this, I'm just curious because I think of Hasbro, the HasLab stuff that has been done with the G.I. Joe, the exclusives, and the special Star Wars ones they're releasing. Is there a counterpart for you in the toy division as someone who does kind of a similar job and has female inventors come in to pitch toys as well as games, or does that also fall into your jurisdiction? I run and head games. Okay. And then I have a team of people. There's a team of us, and my other colleagues, they do what I do for toy. So no, there's definitely other people that run the toy side of Inventor Relations. Gotcha. I was just curious as I'm talking about this particular program, the Women Innovators of Play. I was just curious if there was a Women Innovators of Toys or something like that as well. If there was another seminar similar to what we're doing here in the second year. Okay. So actually, Women Innovators of Play is for play. So it's toy and game. Oh, okay. Gotcha. I'm very game centric, but no, we want toy inventors to come, game inventors, anything around play. Yeah. Gotcha. Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah. Oh, no. And again, I was just kind of curious if it was if there's a clear delineation, like it's separate divisions, but that's play. Play does cover everything. That would make sense. Yeah, exactly. And again, this is October the 10th. Just go to register beforehand. Is there a special, like a cutoff, like a hard cutoff, or can people register the day of if it so strikes them? Yeah, it's early in the morning, so to be safe, I would register up until the 9th. Gotcha. Okay. And if you're listening to this after the fact in the podcast form, we will have a link to that for you. So if you're listening to this October 9th or before, click that link and it'll take you to the site so you can register there to be part of this event. Hear a lot of these fantastic speakers, and Hasbro is synonymous with games and with play. So I think this is going to be a really fun event for people to check out. For people who want to keep up more with you, social media, Hasbro handles and things like that, where should people go online, websites wise, and things like that? Oh, well, I
Probably LinkedIn is the best way. If you look Tanya Thompson, Hasbro, you'll find me there. And also, can I add one more exciting piece about the event on the 10th? And
yes, please.
that is we're launching a challenge. So the challenge, you must be a woman, you must be 18, you must identify as a woman, you must be 18 and over. There's specific countries, but we're running a challenge, like a contest, where we're going to pick 3 top winners. And we did this last year as well. And we're going to award them each $10,000. We're going to give them an all-expense-paid trip into Hasbro headquarters in Rhode Island to see a day in the life of Hasbro. And we're also going to provide them mentorship with a women Hasbro leader. So when we were designing this last year, we know that underrepresented groups need time, opportunity, and money. So we have designed this challenge because we're looking for the next big toy or game idea. And from a woman would be incredible. So we're opening up this challenge again this year to look for the next big toy or game idea from a woman innovator.
Very cool. And there's no limit on the concept. It can be card game, board game, there's no limitations to the concept themselves?
No, it could be a doll. It could be a board game. It could be a new compound like Play-Doh. It can be whatever they dream.
Wow, that's really cool. So yeah, if you're listening right there, I mean, gosh, that'd be such a fun thing. It'd almost be like getting paid to be Willy Wonka's assistant for those who get the movie reference, but with games and play. Tanya Thompson, this has been so much fun. I'm so excited. I hope people check out this event, and I guess maybe we'll talk to you again before year 3 when the event comes around for that one.
My gosh, that would be amazing. Thank you so much for this opportunity to help us spread the word. I really appreciate it, James.
Happy to do it. Thanks for your time tonight, and hopefully we'll talk again very soon.
Awesome. I would love that. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your night.
You too. Bye-bye.
There she goes. What a cool thing. Yeah, if you're listening right now, just go to Hasbro. You can search Women Innovators of Play. Search for that event. I'm sure that'll take you to a registration page. And again, if you're listening to this after the fact in the podcast form prior to October 9th, we'll have a link to that in our show notes. We're going to take a quick commercial break so we can come back and reset with our next guest, who is no stranger to the show. Stan Berkowitz is going to join us talking about his new book, Beyond the Bat. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. Please stand by.
Yo, Joe!
Hi, this is Mary McDonald Lewis, and I was the voice of Lady J on G.I. Joe.
Hi, this is Bill Ratner. I'm the voice of Flint on G.I. Joe. And listening to Geek to Me Radio
is half the battle.
G.I. Joe against Cobra, the enemy, fighting to save the day. He never gives up. He's always there.
Welcome back. Since we just had someone from Hasbro on, I had to have a G.I. Joe return liner, of course. Bill Ratner and Mary McDonald Lewis. If you missed one of those previous shows with guests like that, you can check out the archive at geektomeradio.com. There's a celebrity interviews page. You can click on that and take you through the list of who we've had on the show before, listen by episode, or just listen in order. You can check those out and make sure you subscribe on YouTube as well. Normally we have video, but tonight Joey V is off on assignment. So we're running it old school, radio only. Speaking of radio only, this show would not be possible without the support of our premier sponsor, of course, the Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau. You know the website, discoverstcharles.com. Boy, this is one of the last days here. We're coming up on October, which means their Legends and Lanterns Festival is just about to start out there. If you've not been out there for this before and you're a Halloween fan, you got to get out and check this out. It runs the last 3 weekends of October. And you can go to their website again, discoverstcharles.com, click on the events tab and look under their festivals, Legends and Lanterns right there to tell you more about it. They closed the street for part of this. They have Pumpkin Glow, which is a lot of fun. They've got people who will actually come out. You can dress up in costume, bring the kids out. It's a family-friendly event. And you'll be able to interact with all sorts of fun characters like Count Dracula is out there. You can talk to him. You can talk to Lizzie Borden, who had an axe, and you know the rest of the story from there. actual literary figures like the Brothers Grimm. Mary Shelley will be out there. You can talk to her. All sorts of fun things to see and do. You can talk to Ichabod Crane. You can sing karaoke with the Phantom of the Opera. All sorts of fun to be had the last 3 weekends of October. And if you just want to go out there when it's not a big festival going on, stop by the Visitor Center. Check out their Hit the Bricks tour. They'll take you along the cobblestone streets. They'll show you the significance of this building, why this area is important, what happened on this place at this time. And it's a really cool way to get to know historic St. Charles and South Main Street in particular. A cool time is had by all. Make sure you check out the website. If you're out of town, want to come visit, it's a great place to start with your resources right there. DiscoverStCharles.com. That's DiscoverStCharles.com. As we always say, it's an historically good time. Speaking of good time, my next guest has been on before with a lot of great stories, and now he's collected all the stories in a single book, Beyond the Bat, Secrets of a Superhero Scribe. Stan Berkowitz joins us once again. Stan, thanks for your time tonight.
Hey, glad to be here, James. How you doing?
Good, good. I got to tell you, I finished the book. I took it with me on vacation. I was out of town last weekend. Took it with me. I love it. It's a page turner. And I think one of the things I like so much about it, and you point this out in the book, it's not chronological. It kind of pops around to different areas in time, which kind of keeps the reader on their toes and really engaged. So I love that aspect of it.
Well, I'm glad you did. There is the chronology at in the very last chapter, though. So there's some people I'm sure who would like to, put everything in the proper place in terms of time. So that's why I put that last chapter in, somewhat resentfully, but what the hell?
It really is such a cool, because, you and I have talked before, and I've had you on the show. We talked about your brief stint on T.J. Hooker. There's a chapter in the book about that. You've been on the Justice League podcast with Susan Eisenberg and I, and talked about some of the stories there and everything like that. But having it all put together, it's just such a fascinating glimpse into the life of a Hollywood screenwriter.
Well, it started just during COVID when I had nothing to do. And if you're a writer, it's kind of hard to stop writing. They wanted you to stop doing everything else, including socializing. So I was there and just started writing one essay after the other. And then the hard part was determining what order I should put them in. If you read the thing chronologically, it's just, I don't know, it's kind of depressing, and it doesn't really get to the superhero stuff until at least 60% into the book.
Yeah.
So I wanted to put the superhero stuff early for people, and then the kind of the early stuff in my life comes later, because those are some real life lessons that I learned. Kind of cautionary tales. One about someone who never got in the business, and another cautionary tale at the very end about a guy who was in it a long time, got very rich, but was still really, really insecure.
Yeah, the guy with the Mercedes who will remain nameless.
Yes, yes.
I don't think I knew the story, because some of these, like I said, you've shared glimpses of them with me. But the story about the person who you call Lucky, that was heartbreaking.
Yeah, and real too. Well, what do you do if you go to film school, and frankly, in film school, and I went to the UCLA Film School as both an undergraduate and a graduate, and maybe 1 in 10 get into the business. 1 in 10. So, what happens afterward if you're not one of the 1 in 10? What if you're, the 9 others? If you go to law school and you don't become a lawyer, what is it, like maybe 1 out of 10 people fail the bar and never become lawyers? But if you spend all that money, you go to law school and you don't become a lawyer, well, what happens?
Right.
In film school, it's the other way around. What happens if you don't get in? And I wanted to show one case. I had written a book with a co-writer named David Lees many years ago, and it was just kind of a story. It was stories about how the film business worked. But what I got, all those years ago, were phone calls from people saying, I'm trying to get in. How do I get in? What do I have to do? So I thought there'd probably be a few people like that wanting to read this book for advice on how to get in. And of course, I told them what could happen if they don't get into the business.
Yeah. I mean, there's no roadmap per se, because I know that's one of the questions people like Susan and Phil Lamar get a lot. He said, how do I get into voice acting? And it's not always as easy as, well, do what I did and the same thing will happen, because different people, different results, different circumstances. That's kind of hard to field that question, I would say.
Well, speaking about voice acting, there's a great quote from James Tucker, who is a great animator, and I've worked with at Warner Brothers for a long time. James Tucker said that voice acting is the hardest thing that people think is easy. Yeah,
that makes sense.
And it's true. And the way you get into that is just by being an actor, any kind of actor.
Right.
Because voice acting is acting.
Yeah, that's what Kevin Conroy always told people. He's like, you have to be an actor. You have to understand. You can't just go in. Some people think it's just, I make funny voices all the time. And it's so much more than that, because if you don't know how to act, then those funny voices aren't necessarily going to do you much good.
Exactly. And it's the same way with writing cartoons. People think, well, cartoons is for children. That'll be easy for me. I won't try to write anything complex. I won't try to write Chekhov or anything. I'll Chekhov, not the Star Trek guy, the Russian.
The writer, yes, of course.
Yes, but I'll be simple. I'll just write for children. That'll be easy. And it's not. It's writing. You have to become a writer in order to even do what things that seem simple, but they actually aren't. I mean, in the book, I talk a little bit about writing for children. It's a fairly difficult thing to catch their attention. Mm-hmm. So it's not as easy as people think.
I love you. Start out chapter 1 is just how to win an Emmy. So people are probably going, I'll just read that chapter and I'll know what to do. But it's really how it really kind of sets the table for the rest of the book.
I wanted to start out that way because I thought, well, had I been doing it chronologically, that would have been way at the end. But I just thought, a lot of people who might pick this up would be interested in that right off the bat. So I started that way. I hope that it didn't, it wasn't too much into the weeds about the process of getting one, because it's not really easy. You don't just do your best work and then all of a sudden you get a phone call, hey, you got nominated. It's the studio you work with has to do a lot of work in order to get you to a position where you might win one,
and see,
or at least be nominated.
Yeah, and as a layman, that was kind of interesting to me, because I always assumed, the studios, the networks, they put out stuff, and then there's like an independent board, like the Hollywood Foreign Press or whatever, vote on, we liked these, we'll submit these. I didn't realize that they went out and politicked for their own behalf, and hey, we want this show to get seen. Who do we have to talk to? And I didn't realize there was so much behind the scenes politics of it all.
Well, it's called show business,
right.
And business is an important part of it. And especially with the Oscars, not so much the Emmys, but certainly the Oscars. There's a lot of money that goes into that.
Yeah, that's it. I just found that whole process fascinating. I think, like you said, the starting out with that, I think was a great way to kind of set the table for the rest of the book.
I hope so. I hope it gets people interested.
And one of the chapters that really resonated with me was, I can't remember if it was chapter 3 or 4, was the green group, how you talked about being assigned to reading groups, because as I'm reading that book, I was like, oh my gosh, because I didn't realize that. I thought we just randomly, we're going to pick colors and you're going to get divided up. So I was in something called the purple group, and I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, oh, purple's a cool color. But we'd go back in the back of the room. We'd sit with they'd have a reading person come in, and we'd go through different stories. I had no idea that I was reading different books than the blue group and the pink group and everything else was having them go through and read. I had no idea.
Well, I can't speak to your particular school, but you're talking about yourself at age 6, right? Roughly age 6, 5 or 6.
I think it was like first through 4th grade. I think they did that, so it would have been roughly about 6 to 10.
But you were aware in later years that there were classes for the quick learners and classes for the slower learners.
Sure,
right?
they had like honors courses you could take, and you had advanced English and things like that. And obviously in math, which I was horrible at, they had, you could, if you pressed ahead, great, you're now in trigonometry, where someone like me is laboring in algebra. So
I actually have a note for you about trigonometry. Okay. If you're bad at math, as I was, trigonometry is your subject because it's practical.
See, I disagree. I hate it. I loved geometry because I'm a very right-brain person.
Well, there you go. Okay, so you weren't so bad in math.
Certain parts of math, like, 'cause I remember going, because we had, and again, this is kind of getting in the weeds. For those of you listening, bear with me for just a moment. We had algebra, and then we had geometry, and then we had trigonometry. Algebra, I was getting, C's in. Every single quarter in geometry, solid A's. We got into trigonometry, and I had to get pulled out of the class because I was failing so badly. It's just a right brain, left brain thing, I think, where
exactly.
I can see shapes. So that was easy for me.
By the way, were you good at music?
Yeah, if I'd practiced more, I would have been. But that's actually funny because my orchestra teacher, I took orchestra all through high school as well, and he's the one who helped pull me out of trigonometry and got me into concert choir. So, Mr. Muir, if you're listening, and I know sometimes you are, thanks for that.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So that was my little stint in my horrible math career when I got into high school. But I didn't realize they broke that down. I just thought it was different. We were in different groups because they couldn't have all of us go back and read at the same time, was my, second grade understanding of what was going on.
Well, we figured it out. I mean, the story in the book is that another kid and I are going, well, wait a minute. They put us in the slow group and we don't belong there. So, but the chapter's not so much about that as it is about elitism.
Yeah.
And also about my own lack of respect for authority.
And that's where it all started for you, Stan, was back in grade school in the green group.
Well, don't you think?
It sounds like it from the way the chapter plays out. Yeah, it's interesting. That chapter resonated with me more than any other one, I think, because I could just relate to it so much. Well, I think almost anyone can. I've talked to people who were on the other side of that, where they were stuck in the slower group and they were really resentful. Really, and the kids knew. Most of the kids knew what was going on, and I think it led to lifelong resentments. Some of the resentment, if you were stuck in a slower class, would be toward toward the people who were toward the kids who were in the quicker, in the brighter group. Yeah, I think. But for me, it was just, when I saw the teacher make that mistake, it was like, these teachers have no idea what they're doing. And luckily, your parents advocated on your behalf, it sounds like, too. So that was good that you had supportive parents. Yeah, well, as I said, the story seems like a good story, but in the end, I was left with complete disrespect for authority figures. Yeah, I mean, it's almost an indictment of the public education system, because these teachers have to make these decisions, and then it's like, based on that, we're going to arbitrarily put you in these groups, and thank goodness you were able to prove, you and your friend were able to prove that, no, we don't belong in this group. Well, in my era, it meant that the ones in the slow group would end up as cannon fodder in Vietnam. Sure, yeah. Which is, I know. Another aspect of the story, gosh. But anyway, the disrespect for authority, I think you have to have that if you're writing superhero stories, because the superheroes always take the law into their own hands. Because if they don't, all they are glorified policemen. Yeah, and it's kind of ironic. The last episode of Justice League Revisited we had you on for was A Better World, and we see what happens when superheroes go too far, taking the law into their own hands. Yeah, that's the extreme position for sure. I loved writing that one. Yeah, I know. I did say, for those of you who are listening, if you haven't checked it out, Justice League Revisited, wherever you get your podcasts from. Stan was just on our most recent episode talking about A Better World, and we've got one coming out Tuesday covering the exact same episode with Dan Reba, the director. So that's a nice double dose of one of the better episodes of Justice League, certainly of season 2, that you'll find. So make sure you check out Justice League Revisited wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm going to take another commercial break. You okay to stick with me, Stan? Yeah, but first I have to mention that Dan Reba was the one who did all the artwork for Beyond the Bat. So very grateful to Dan for that. And I wish we had video tonight, because I'd hold the book up and show you guys. I've got it over here on my console, just out of reach. I've got but the drawings on the cover, and there's the little drawings throughout when you get to the Robin problem and things like that. I love the drawings, and you can tell they're very Dan Reba, which I love so much. So shout out to Dan Reba, of course, did the illustrations, and who was instrumental in doing a lot of the Justice League animated series, Batman the animated series, and things like that as well. We're going to take a very quick commercial break. We're going to come right back in just a moment. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. Please stand by.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
Since we're talking about a book called Beyond the Bat, I figured we had to come back with the voice of Batman, the late, great Kevin Conroy, bringing us back. We'll make sure we tell you, speaking of comic books, make sure we tell you about our comic book sponsor, Bugs Comics and Games. You want to check them out if you're in the greater St. Louis, St. Charles area. I was just there Saturday looking at all the comic books that Larry has in store. It's right there on Bryan Road. You can get there from the Page Extension or from Highway 70. Page Extension 364. I need to get used to calling it Highway 364. But you can go check him out. It's a brick-and-mortar comic book store. He's got back issues, and I always say it's not a comic book store if they don't have back issues. So he's got the new issues. You can go in every Wednesday and get your new comic book day fix. One great way to do it is start a pull list. That way, if you go in there, I know like some of those Transformers issues that Skybound's putting out through Image right now, those are flying off the shelves still, and they've gone to like second and third printings in some cases. If you want to make sure you don't miss a comic book, maybe you can't get there on Wednesday. I can't make it on Wednesday because of my day job, so I usually go either on Thursday or Friday or Saturday to pick up my books. They're always there because I tell Larry ahead of time, hey, I want to make sure I get Transformers, Amazing Spider-Man, Incredible Hulk, want to get Batman, I want to get World's Finest, that great comic that Mark Waid's doing right now, and just put it on your pull list. That way you don't miss an issue. You don't have to worry about, oh gosh, this sold out, and try to track it down somewhere else. Also, a little inside tip, if you want to save some money on that pull list, while you're there, join the Avengers Club. That way you start saving money on your weekly pulls. You can save money on your back issues, your supplies, and other things you might buy there while you're at Bugs Comics. And boy, does he have a lot of cool stuff to choose from. If you want to get out there and check it out, if you're not in the greater St. Louis, St. Charles area, have no fear. You can follow Bugs Comics and Games on Facebook at Bugs Comics and A&D Games. Give his Instagram a like as well and a follow. He's got stuff up there. He'll post occasionally that he's got in store. He might have some new things and he wants to, showcase them. You can go to Instagram and check him out, Bugs Comics and Games. See something you like? Let him know and he'll ship it to you. He'll send you a PayPal invoice. You pay it and he boxes it up and ships it right to your door securely. It's like having your local comic book store no matter where you are. A lot of brick and mortar stores did close because of the pandemic and since the pandemic. But if you have a new comic book store, if you want a new comic book store, I should say, let Bugs Comics and Games be that store for you no matter where you are. So follow him on Facebook, Bugs Comics and Games, Instagram.com/Bugs Comics and Games. It's like having your own personal comic concierge. Bugs Comics and Games, very proud to have them as the official comic book sponsor here on Geek to Me Radio. Talking with Stan Berkowitz for the rest of the hour, his book, Beyond the Bat, Secrets of a Superhero Scribe, with illustrations by the great Dan Reba. This is available only on Amazon, am I correct?
Yes, only on Amazon.
Only on Amazon. So if you want to check it out, you can go there. And if you're listening to this after the fact, we'll have a link to we'll have a direct link to it in the show notes. So you can just scroll down to the bottom of the page and click that there so that you can have it shipped straight to your door. And you can check out the book. It's a quick read. I mean, like I said, it was literally, I know that's a cliche thing to say, but I couldn't put it down. I'm like, I'm just going to read one more chapter. I got to see how this one turns out. I love the title of this chapter. And it was just one, I think I devoured the book in like less than 3 days.
Did you read it in order, or did you just read like a magazine where you jumped around?
No, I did. I took it, and that's one of the things I liked about it that kind of really kept me kept me reading, was that it wasn't in chronological order. So for someone who has a little bit of an attention span problem, I think that may have helped me.
Good.
And you're going to be not only are you selling the book, but you're going to be able to sign it for people. Yeah. What the name of the con? I'm trying to remember the one coming up this weekend that you'll be at.
It's the Los Angeles Comic-Con down at the LA Convention Center.
And you'll be there all weekend with copies of the book, obviously?
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Yes. I'll be at the Heroic Fine Arts booth.
Oh yeah, James. James, who runs that, it's a fantastic booth.
Yes. So I haven't actually met him yet, but I look forward to meeting him on Friday.
Okay, yeah, he's a fantastic guy. Very nice, good guy, and I've met him a couple times now that they've been at Phoenix Fan Fusion. He brought the guys to Planet Comic-Con in Kansas City earlier this year. So, yeah, it's a really impressive booth, so you're in good hands.
Right, and Dan will be there, Tom Ruger, and Kevin Altieri, I think, and a couple others as well, all at that one booth.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Yeah, so you can have Dan sign it, too. You can get the writer and the artist. And
he can do his artwork for people as well.
Yeah, no, my gosh, if you have the chance to get a commission from Dan Reba, bring a blank cover and have him do stuff. I've got we met John Rhys Davies was at Planet Comic-Con as well, and I was like, oh, they never made a Lord Hades figure for me to have him sign. And Dan goes, well, let me do a cover. And he took a Justice League cover, drew this great Lord Hades figure, and John Rhys Davies got the biggest kick out of it. He goes, I voiced this guy. So it was fantastic.
Wow. Great. I'm looking forward to it. And there's another one in Dallas that I'll be doing on the weekend of October 18th, 19th, and 20th.
Now, if I'm remembering correctly, you're fairly new to the con circuit, right? You haven't done a lot of them?
No, actually, I started going in, well, as a professional, I started going in 94, but as somebody who's interested in this stuff, I remember going to one in Los Angeles in, I think, 1973.
Oh, wow.
That goes back a long way. I remember Dan Reba and I are big fans of the old serials from, the 1940s, Captain Marvel.
Sure, yeah.
Rocket and stuff. And there were some old guys in 73, there were some of the old guys from who did stunt work in the serials who showed up at that convention. I forgot the name of it, but it was really wild. David Gerald was there from the Tribble episode of Star Trek. So this goes back a ways. But as a professional, I've been going fairly regularly up until just before COVID. Okay. And then COVID just stopped everything. I became a hermit. But it allowed me to write a book, so it wasn't all bad.
So that's why I always try to say if you can find a silver lining, even in a global pandemic, you're doing pretty good, I think. But
exactly.
But you're getting, now that you're going back to getting these, I guess you'll get a lot of questions, because I know when we have you on the Justice League podcast, we always love getting the Twitter questions that we take in from people who are so excited to ask you questions about some of these episodes that you got to write, and to have that immediate interaction with the fans at these conventions like this has got to be so much fun.
Well, the hard part is remembering the episodes, because some of these go back 30 years, the
Sure.
Spider-Man stuff does go back 30 years. And of course, there's a huge rush while you're working on them, you're just rushing to get it out, and you don't always see the final version.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So sometimes, sometimes when they ask you a question, you're thinking of stuff that was in your version, but it might have been cut out of the version that went on TV.
True. Yeah. And I know that's one of the things you mentioned in there, because I remembered you worked on Spider-Man. I think last time we had you on, we didn't really get to delve into that too much, but the Spider-Man animated series, speaking as someone who grew up watching Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends and still hears Dan Gilvezan's voice in my head when I read the Spidey comics, that Spider-Man series in 94 was so good. And when I'm reading that chapter about all the headache with Stan Lee, and Avi was in there saying, well, we have to do this because it's going to sell more toys. It seems like, as a layperson, like, oh, that'd be such a fun job to write for that series, but it sounded like it was such toil.
It was. I've often said that it's easier to work for one person with bad taste than it is to work for four people with good taste.
Yeah.
And in that case, the four different entities that we worked with, none of them were objectionable. Nothing was bad. It's just that they disagreed with each other over fairly small stuff.
Yeah.
And all of them were also jockeying for control and power.
Mm-hmm.
So you had that element too, and the writers were just reduced to a position of just trying to satisfy four people who were, as a group, unsatisfiable. If that's the word.
Yeah, I know. I was very fortunate to meet Stan Lee a few times before he passed away. But he was, like you mentioned in the book, he didn't hit that global. He was always well known. He was the show person. He was the big front man for Marvel Comics, but he didn't really hit that level of superstardom until the 2008 Iron Man, and then it really just exploded after that. So you knew him before then.
Yeah, I mean, he was a celebrity in the comics world.
Sure.
But he could still, walk down the street in Beverly Hills and, not get swamped by people. People would, guys my age would wave to him, "Hey, Stan, thank you for all the great stuff you've done." But he wasn't quite the celebrity that he later became during that era. He just, and frankly, his behavior was that of another writer, an older, more mature, more experienced writer. He wasn't, I'm the great Stan Lee. Whatever I say has to go.
Yeah,
he was just kind of another guy in the writer's room, and someone who had a lot of experience and who was nice to work with.
When you're working on some of these projects like Superboy, the live action series, were there people who kind of like Stan Lee who were writers who were familiar with the subject? I'm assuming there were some people from DC Comics who were consulting on that particular project, I assume. Was there anyone who just made it like, gosh, this is such a joy to work with X person or Y person? Was there anyone like that who specifically stood out to you as, this is great?
Yes, the people who worked for me directly. Not the people I worked for, but the people who certainly worked for me. And one of them, is Mark DeMatteis, J.M.
Yes.
DeMatteis.
Yeah.
The budget allowed us to hire him for 6 or 8 weeks. He came down to Orlando. Great guy to work with. The other staff writer, who's long deceased, was named Paul Steubenrow. Who's great to work with. Some of the directors are really cool. One of them, of course, was David Nutter, who, as you well know, went on to do Game of Thrones and a zillion other shows. So that was fun to work with. And also on that particular show, for me, part of the excitement was to be able to bring in Jack Larson and Noel Neal, who had he worked on the original Superman TV show that I had grown up on.
Yeah, we have the Superman celebration right here. I say right here, it's about a 3.5-hour drive in Metropolis, Illinois. They do Superman days and they have a statue of Noelle there that she was actually alive for when they dedicated the statue. They've got some great pictures of her standing next to her statue that they've now dedicated there on the main street. That might be another thing if you want to try reaching out to them, because I'm sure they'd love to have you, and you could another place to sell the book. And selfishly, we'd get you a little closer here in the Midwest.
Okay. Metropolis. I'll check that out.
Yeah, Metropolis Chamber of Commerce. Last time I talked, there was a woman named Trish Steckenright. I'll email you the details, but she's probably, if she's still there, she's the person to reach out to, because they always have writers and artists and creators there as well. And then they usually try to bring in a cape and a couple of other people. Like they had Nicole Maines was there, and Jesse Rath, who played Brainiac. And then they had, I think they had Tyler Hoechlin this year or the year before. But it's always a lot of fun. It's really cool. They got the giant Superman statue that's famous. Obama has this the picture of him standing in front of it posing that kind of made it really famous. But yeah, it's a great place to visit. So I don't get paid a lick for this, but if you want to check it out, it's pretty cool.
I will check it out. And if you know of a Gotham City nearby, I'll try that one too.
Yeah, I think that's further up the East Coast, but I'll look into it for you.
Okay.
Again, if you're listening right now, if you're just now tuning in, maybe we're talking with Stan Berkowitz, fantastic writer, and he's got a brand new book out, Beyond the Bat, Secrets of a Superhero Scribe. I'm glad to see you're a little more active on social media now. You got the Facebook going. Are you on X or Instagram yet at all?
I think I'm on Instagram. No X yet. Okay. No X. But if anybody wants to talk to me, I guess Facebook is the way to do it. I'm still not very good at manipulating it, but I'm trying. I was James over at Heroic Fine Arts told me I have to get on Facebook if I want to be on his in his booth. So I did it finally. I took the great leap and did it.
Well, good. Yeah, I was glad to see you pop up there. That's really cool. So if you're wanting to connect with Stan, it sounds like Facebook is the best way to do it. You have your own website too, though. People can reach out to you that way.
No.
Oh, okay. See, that'll be the next thing.
Don't push too hard. I mean, this technical stuff is
right,
is beyond me.
We'll ease into it then. We'll ease into it. Next will be we'll work on the Instagram, and the next thing we'll get to the website. But
Okay.
like I said, if you're listening right now and you get the chance, you can obviously tell Stan's a fantastic guy, a font of knowledge, and the book is so enjoyable. Beyond the Bat: Secrets of a Superhero Scribe. Is there any kind of thoughts for a sequel in the works?
No, actually.
Okay.
Most of the stories I didn't tell are stories that you really can't tell.
Gotcha.
They're not something I would want children to hear.
I understand. So with that said, you definitely want to check out this book because it's going to be a one and done. Stan
that's
Berkowitz,
it.
It's always fantastic to talk to you. I've got a lot more questions, so if we don't talk to you on Justice League Revisited, we'll have to have you back on here very soon.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me on, James. I really appreciate it.
It's entirely
Love
my
your
pleasure.
show.
We'll talk again very soon.
Thank you again, James.
Thank you.
Good night.
Be well. There he goes. Thank you to all of you for listening tonight. Thank you to my other guest, Tanya Thompson from Hasbro, Senior Director of Inventor Relations. Make sure you check out the Women Innovators of Play event. You can check that out as well. And obviously, thank you to Stan Berkowitz. Thank you to my sponsors, the City of St. Charles, Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau, and of course, Bugs, Comics, and Games. Make sure you check out TwoRiversComicCon.com. Tickets are now available for that, happening Memorial Day weekend of 2025. A great lineup of guests happening in historic St. Charles as well. So make sure you check out that event, 2 Rivers Comic Con. We'll have more about that in future episodes of the show. That's going to do it. Until next week, my friends.
This is Geek Time.